We were so close, but we were so far away. So, played a song at the beginning of the session today. Some of you guys might know the band, Journey. Any 80s music fans in here? Everybody should raise their hand or you're out. Anyway, this is a song that's not, necessarily played very often when we think of Journey, but I think it's an appropriate song. It's called It Could Have Been You, which comes off this Raised on Radio album. And I played it a few times. I played it during the Pitch Kung Fu session, which we do every Thursday for founders to come pitch and get expertise and feedback and hear from other funders. I played it the other day on that session, but I wanted to play it again today at Who's Got My Money because I think that we stand at a great opportunity right now as we head into fundraising season. So I think that very often we don't look at the situation where we realize how much we can actually do to affect the outcome. How much it absolutely can be you that can be the one that gets funded. Welcome, welcome. Sit close, guys. So there was an individual named Mr. Branch Rickey, and he said that luck is the residue of design. Luck is the residue of design. What do you guys think that actually means? Luck is the residue of design. Now, Branch might not be somebody you remember, but he did do something very significant that changed the face, I think, of the United States in certain ways, and certainly of the sport that he was a part of, which is Major League Baseball. He was the one that made and took an enormous risk and signed a baseball player named Jackie Robinson. And he said in 1946 that luck is the residue of design. Luck is the residue of design was also said by Mr. John Milton in 1608. It was true in 1608, it was true in 1946, and it's true today. Luck is the residue of design. So this idea that we can design things and that we can actually be intentional about how we live our lives, how we build our ventures, and how intentional we are about the design of our fundraise strategy, the way that we approach that. For many people, it's this haphazard, super casual, like I know some angels and maybe I'm going to hit up some family, friends, that kind of thing. It's a very casual approach. And so one of the things we try to do at Fusion 42, which is our online community with pairing and matching technology backend, is to get founders to understand that they are the X factor in their business and that 80% of what they're going to experience is going to come down to their design. How intentional are they about their approach to their go-to market strategy, to how they collect client feedback, to how they recruit, how they hire, and also, obviously, to the topic at hand today and Who's Got My Money, about how they approach their fundraise. And this is the reason why, even though many of you, if you're studied startups, you hear this concept of go-to market, which is, I think, the most significant thing that founders miss when they are going to build their company. Go-to market literally helps to dictate whether or not you have a marketable, which is to say, market-ready venture. Market-ready ventures usually either get revenue, or they get revenue and they raise. So this is the thing that founders think that they can skip in this attempt to go towards raising. And so design, I think, is this thing that we can think about. Are we just trying to do things by default, or are we actually trying to do things by design? And what does that make a difference for as we build? Somebody else that was pretty cool in the way that he built some things said that luck is where readiness, which goes back to the design piece, meets opportunity. And this was a gentleman by the name of Yuri Levine, and he created a little app that we call Waze. How many of you guys have used Waze? How many of you guys know that was one of the first billion-dollar unicorns, and this guy's already created a few more? So one of the things that you guys will get to have at the end of the session, you want to come hang out in the Telegram group that we have on Fusion. I will make the audiobook, which is called Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution. Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution. Again, this is an intentional design decision that we make. A lot of times founders are so in love with their product, they want to build their product that they're too afraid to sell. They don't think that I need to sell the solution before I actually go and build it, which means you need to understand the problem first before you can then go build it. And founders don't do this. They love to go into their little workshop and go build something without actually checking what the market response is. This is the reason why GTM is so critical. And Yuri, the reason Yuri's an impressive individual is he's probably on his way to his $4th billion company. The first one took him 7 years, just under 6 years. The next one took him 4 years. and he's got a few more in the hopper. His last one was in 2020. I think his first one, I can't remember when the exit was for Waze. Google was the one that bought him. Google came to him first. They rejected the offer. Google came back a couple years later, $1.5 billion exit, and immediately he left that and said, it's time to start something new. And his book actually breaks down this process, and he really tries to hammer home the importance of that luck is not just this luck thing. Guys, this is a repeatable pattern. One of the things that we talk about when we break down capital is that there is a way you can rig the game for the success of your venture. Capital is not the be-all, end-all. It's not going to save your startup. One investor is not going to save your startup. We cover that here at these sessions. But capital is the rocket fuel to the raw resources and the source that you show up as the founder. And so I want you guys to start thinking about luck in a very different way. Yes, there's a huge amount of luck. I don't know what I did to be born in the United States at this time as a founder to be able to create businesses. I got lucky, right? However, if luck is really when readiness, which is something you do control, meets opportunity, will you be ready? So back to the Journey song. You know, how many of you guys are going to be able to say, yeah, it was me. It wasn't, it could have been me. It actually was me. I was ready at the time. I happened to be in the elevator with a certain individual, and they happened to know the right funder that then brought a bunch of their funder buddies along, right? These are the kinds of things that founders are just, I will just say this in general, as we're building a funding platform to automate the fundraising process. It does not tend to occur to founders that they're the problem very often to their own success. And this is a good problem to have, founders, because if you're not the reason that you're most likely to not be successful, you also can't be the solution of why you're most likely to be successful. So put it another way, if I were to give a bunch of investor referrals to a founder that's not ready mentally, which we spend a bunch of time in the fundraising fluency sessions on Tuesdays online, breaking down the money-raising mindset and energy we need to have, the 80% that we need to bring to the table, and then the rest is all mechanics, 20% of like how do we do it. And Yuri in his book is going to break down how much you must be obsessed with the problem you're solving. You can't stop thinking about it. You're ready to burn the ships at the shore. You're not going to worry about income, all these other things that are very legitimate concerns, but really when a startup founder has really decided, they made a choice, they can't stop, right? So these are things that we often don't really tend to give enough weight to, in my opinion. So when we're building a funding platform, I could give all sorts of investor leads to individuals, and they're almost never ready for them. They're not ready for the introductions. They're not ready to pitch. And there's really two major components that are missing. There's the market readiness, which is where founders should spend the majority of their time. And then there's the financial literacy and the capital and raise ready side of it, which we also address in depth in the sessions and online in the Telegram chats with all the champions that are experts on different topics. You know, founders usually just want you to hand them somebody, and they don't realize how far away they are from being fundable as a result. You can get occasionally, as we say in another way, the different kind of lucky. But is that the kind of lucky you want to be, or do you want to be the kind of lucky where you literally designed this to happen? This is just an eventuality. Another interesting entrepreneur that really changed the way we look at manufacturing processes. How many of you guys know who Michael Dell is? Michael Dell, Dell Computers. So they had this really sophisticated business plan that they were going to write up. Many of you guys noticed that I don't use a lot of backing stuff or whatever, because at the end of the day, that's not what really matters. When you go to fundraising is a full contact sport. So we can talk about theory and have nice diagrams and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's really more the energy behind it. So Michael Dell's in there, and this is actually talked about in Yuri's book as well. It's worth kind of looking at in more depth than he covers in the book, but it's a good reminder that he's got in the book. Is that Michael Dell says, okay, so he puts it up on the screen. Here's our plan. We're going to build computers. We're going to sell them. Done. Now, who can tell me what might have gotten switched in this? Who can tell me maybe what was wrong with this particular plan?
They put the GTM first.
GTM first, you?
Yeah, I was going to say the problem. Like,
Yeah.
what makes
Yeah.
your computer special?
Right. So we had one person said, either because he's listening or he already knew the answer, they didn't put the GTM first. So Michael Dell changed it. He got it, and he said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to sell computers, then we're going to build them. Do you see how that little switch made them a billion-dollar company. Here's why. How many of you guys know what just-in-time manufacturing is? Okay, great. A lot of people are familiar. I'm not a manufacturing guy. I'm not really a technical guy when it comes to a lot of that stuff. But here's what just-in-time manufacturing means, is that you have the processes, you have the system so dialed in that the minute you get the order is when you start producing and creating the finished good product. Now, I don't know that Dell was the first company to do this, but they were certainly the first company to do it in the commuter space. And that little thing, think about that. We're going to build computers and we're going to sell them. Get switched to, and this is a design decision, right? Think about the intentionality of it. We're going to sell computers and then we're going to build them. Think about the efficiency this creates. Think about the margins this creates. Think about the listening to the customers that this creates. Think about how powerful that is, and this is the reason why Michael Dell is a billionaire. So I mentioned that we're going to be running some events here in the future, as we always do at Venture House and all that. Venture Studio Summit, some family office events. I actually went and looked at a hotel that I decided would be a great location to do a family office event. Michael Dell owns the place. It's massive. It's on the water, it's gorgeous, beautiful, it's old, probably 100 years old. And, you know, these are the kinds of things you get to do when you go from being a founder to a funder. And as you guys know, funders are really our North Star at Fusion. That is what we're focused on creating. How do founders go, build their companies, get resourced up, and exit their companies so that they can repeat it again. I had an interesting conversation with a new friend of mine earlier today who moved to this country from another country. Gotta love those immigrant entrepreneurs. They're freaking badass, aren't they? And he had an exit from a company that you guys would know, Roblox. And he is now angel investing. He's investing in other models. He's looking at different models. This is the kind of opportunity that you get when you live your life by design. And I find that he's extremely high learner. So I'm like, why are you asking me and Derek, my partner, all of these questions about capital, and what is it that you find interesting about the pitch kung fu sessions and everything else? And his response was, I just feel that there's always more that I can learn. And I think that's, again, an intelligent design decision. So getting back into the intention of things, how often do you guys recognize the major things that are going to make up your ability to raise for your company? And raising for your company, as we talk about the capital macros, how many of you guys like fitness? You guys know what the food macros are, right? Different types of food that we can eat. There's capital macros too. The one we always think about as far as capital is dollar capital. That's the currency that comes into our business. But how often do we think about the one that's probably most important if we're going to have a business at all, which is our sales and client capital? This is our ability to acquire users. And then third, we have what we call human capital, which is probably the most important thing in the business long term. You don't see billion-dollar companies without amazing teams. And how good are you as a founder at being able to recruit? And I think your intentionality and your energy dictates whether or not you'll attract capital, whether or not you know how to acquire clients and customers, which needs to come first, and third, whether or not you're going to build a team that's badass. And for those of you guys that don't know, your go-to talent strategy needs to be really robust, because you're in an all-out war with other companies and other startups for getting the best talent into your venture. Okay. Today, we decided we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do quite a bit of AMA, Ask Me Anything, which we also have a channel inside of the Telegram group where you guys can come in real time and get real feedback on what you're working on, what you're confused about, whether it's legal. We have a really robust AI channel for any of you guys that are confused about AI. We have financial modeling. And there's channel champions in each of these channels that are willing to make time to give you real-time feedback, which I think, how many of you guys like to save time as you're already feeling like this is a pretty difficult process to build a startup? The other thing is we have horizontal, if that's a vertical track, we have horizontal tracks where we have content in each of these channels on a rotation, 6 weeks, every 3 months, those kinds of things. Okay, so what we said we were going to do is Ask Me Anything. If you guys have a really short question, we can handle that there, but if you guys want to, you can come up here and you can tell everyone what you're building very succinctly. You're gonna explain it in 2 to 3 sentences, no more, and then we're gonna get into your questions. So who feels like they're ready for that experience? Tal, want to come up? And then you, Mr. GTM, we'll be on deck. Make sure that you guys have your questions prepared and that you've thought through how you're going to announce what you're building, what you're intending to the universe. All right, Mr. Tal, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you.
It's on.
We're building, we're developing a cancer screening test for women that is faster, better, and affordable.
Awesome. What are your questions? Let's do it.
In terms of convertible note or valuation cap, let's talk about valuation cap. Is that a pre-money valuation?
Mike's not on.
It's on. It's just recording. Yeah.
Is that
Thanks.
is a valuation cap a pre-market? I mean, pre-money or is it post-money?
You-
What does investors look at it?
Well, you can decide, but for them, it depends on what they want. That's a situational. Okay, so let's break this down for everybody. Everybody know what a convertible note is? Convertible note is one of the structures you can use to raise. It's a legal document, essentially, in an agreement, and it is essentially a debt instrument that can convert into equity. Now, one thing I'll mention, as we mentioned on the last call, is that there are seasons. Something else I forgot to mention here in this room is we're heading into fundraising season, which is the reason why we're doing the session we are doing this way today. Fundraising season, the second fundraising season in the United States, which is responsible for 65% plus of all available capital for venture in the world, is open from Labor Day weekend, after that, to Thanksgiving. So it's really important that if you guys are serious about learning this and you're serious about having a pitch blitz, that you start getting prepared and you start showing up at the sessions and those kinds of things to be ready for it. The other fundraising season is January to the end of May. So summertime is not usually an ideal time to raise, unless you're going after alternative capital. Traditional capital is all the capital types that you're already aware of. You've already heard of it: friends and family money, angel money, VCs. That's all traditional money. Most of them are checked out, and most families, period, most banks, most everything, they're completely not thinking about investment during the summer. I even have a very large funder that came to me that wants to back more of the stuff that we're building, and he just called it out as it was. He goes, look, I'm super interested. I think we need to work together, but just know I'm on vacation mode all over the planet with my kids until September, right? Okay, the other thing I was going to mention with seasons is that when money is cheap, you end up having pro-founder agreements that are more common. Agreements being the legal structure or the entity that you raise inside of. We'll get into that in a second. When money's more expensive, which we're in an environment now where money's a little bit more expensive, and it will probably stay that way for the foreseeable future, the funders tend to have a little bit more of the upper hand. So we just went through a 15-year period where you kind of didn't have to be a genius to do pretty well in a lot of the markets because they were uptrending. This also includes what the individual ultra high net worth check writers were doing. Many of them got a little bit of an attitude, a little bit of some confidence, because they're like, oh, I don't need support services. I don't need people that are veterans in venture because I'm doing so well as an LP limited partner inside of a fund. But now the emperor is being shown to not have clothes, as many VCs are being exposed for the lack of performance in their funds because they made dumb bets or they got involved in crypto at the wrong time for the wrong reasons. I'm pro blockchain in general, but getting involved in something just because it's a fad, here's speaking to you, AI, is not really a great investment thesis. I believe that AI is the most significant technology that we've seen since the internet, if not more. It's moving that fast. It's already changed the world, and if you're not taking it seriously, which is the reason we've devoted a whole channel to breaking down the speed at which it's moving, you're not taking things seriously. But you can't just show up and say, I'm an AI startup, and that's going to get you funded. There is a lot of FOMO, fear of missing out, going on, as often there is with VCs, with AI, but you have to explain how it's actually an enormous part of what you're building. And in general, it shouldn't really be a feature. It should just be part of the way you're creating the solution for the problem that you've so well researched. So coming back to agreements, during a high pro-founder environment, safe agreements, which is a convertible note that's even safer for the founder, were very big. But in general, a funder has to be pretty motivated to do a safe because they are absolutely not in the funder's best interest, because the founder can basically just convert it to debt, and the funder never gets equity. And very few venture-related investors actually want just debt interest rates. They want the big pop because they're going to wait several years for this to come into something, right? Convertible notes are a little bit simpler because they're actually a little bit more on the pro-funder side of things where they have a little bit more control. His other question is, do I do pre and post money situation? We actually just did a whole legal session on this that will break this down in way more depth this week with one of our legal experts, and there's even diagrams inside the legal channel on Telegram that break down the differences between post money and pre money. Think of it this way though. Because if this is a piece of real estate, the seller's on one end, they want the most price, right? And the buyer wants the lower price, right? This is the same thing when you're dealing with a venture investor. The founder wants to sell their stock at the highest price possible, which is the highest valuation possible, right? And I know you know this. Mm-hmm. The funder, on the other hand, would love to buy a cheap investment where they feel that the stock that they're buying and investing in is undervalued. They're getting the investment. So another kind of tip to just mention, the higher your valuation is in the pre-seed and seed range, especially before you're producing product market fit and you have clients and you have revenue, the more scared an investor is going to be to get involved because they're buying an expensive, which is to say maybe much more than 5, 6, 7 million in the pre-seed, and sometimes even seed round goes up a little bit. You start having investors say, this is actually kind of expensive. Like if this doesn't work out, because if they get involved at 4 million versus 7 million, you see the difference. They're going to make a much better return at a lower rate. Now, we need to also know what the percentage of stock they're getting for their investment in order to really calculate these numbers. But they want something that's post-money. They don't usually want something that's pre-money. The founders want it to be pre-money. Look at that smile. So if there's more questions you have on this, I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Convertible would have provision where you could actually buy down the debt.
Right.
And not convert to equity.
So this is the reason I bring up real estate, because real estate is all a negotiation. A building is literally worth what somebody's willing to buy for it, pay for it. So if you can get somebody to if you can get somebody to sell you a building for $1 in a contract, you have a deal. So coming back to venture, guys, it's a negotiation. And the first major investor that comes and does, maybe that has brand recognition, that comes and does their due diligence, will be typically the lead investor, and that's called pricing the round. What they decide, what you guys negotiate together, is the valuation that they're putting their money in at tends to be the moving valuation for the company, and then all the other investors will follow suit. And there's many investors you guys will find that don't invest at all until there's a lead or recognizable or brand investor that's already involved that did the due diligence. They're following them in. And this is really annoying to us as founders, of course, because it is hard to sometimes find that lead investor that will take the chance. And there's all sorts of reasons why funders do this. Go ahead.
Clarification. So if you're doing the first round, an unpriced round,
Yeah.
with a convertible,
Yeah.
with the provision you could buy down the debt or pay off the debt.
So
Along those lines is, how important is a valuation number should an investor ask, because it's not a price round? However, on the option pool side, you may be doing a 409 for the grants. Now, can you defer those grants? But how important is
this is where the negotiation comes in. It really is going to come down to the investor, the lead investor in particular.
Right.
And then, of course, some of the other investors have to be on board as well because they're going to follow in. And this is where I would say having the right legal that understands these types of transactions, that actually does these types of transactions, and that in real time, I can give you like what can be generally true, as I am already, and explaining it to everyone here, but it is going to come down to the situation. Like I'll give you an example. When we were doing venture debt, we wouldn't really try to, so when you do venture debt, there's a couple of different things that can happen, but it's essentially it's debt. So we would look for companies that were doing $1 million run rate, and we would come in and we'd say, look, we're going to give you 300 grand, upwards of $1 million, whatever it is. And then we're going to agree on what your company is at the minute we give you the money. And then we are going to have golden tickets. We're going to have warrants, which is an option to buy the stock at a later date and time, right? Like you would in real estate, an option to buy it. And then we agree. But in order for this negotiation to finish, we have to agree on a number that we think the company's worth. Because if we venture debt at 10 million, and through the shared efforts of both the funding team and the founder and their team, in a couple of years, let's say under 5 years, are going to get to 100 million, that's a good chunk of difference in the valuation of the company. So we have an option to buy the stock at a date and time, but it's at a pre-agreed price.
You say venture debt is a convertible.
Not usually. Can be. It depends on the agreement. It depends on what we negotiate. The reason I bring it up is because it really is that variable. And I was just explaining the importance of that valuation being agreed upon because it changes the nature of the deal and it changes the incentives in the deal. So a great funder is going to know that we need to make sure we leave enough equity on the table that the founding team is motivated through every round. Because every round, a founder is going to get, they're going to get diluted, and so will the early funders, right? The value of their stock per stock is going to rise though, so that tends to be the balance. But there's always a negotiation with that. And on the venture debt side, there was two parts that we wanted. First, we wanted our interest rate, which we always got. But the thing we were most excited about is we really wanted the company to be very successful. Because if they did $100 million, we just got $100 million worth of value stock for a $10 million price. Now, we still have to bring the physical dollars to the founder at the moment we decide to exercise that option. So coming back to the convertible note situation is it really depends on the agreement. And it depends on what you set up with that individual. So what I'd recommend is let's have a deeper conversation in Telegram about it and kind of nerd out on it in there. Cool. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Awesome. All right, who's next? Mr. GTM.
It was just
Okay.
a real newbie question.
Okay.
You tossed the offer out for detailed opportunities
Sure.
or
Yeah.
quick ones. So my question is, how do you protect IP when you're just socializing the idea?
The question was, how do you protect IP when you're socializing the idea? My first response to that is you don't. Stop worrying about it. What matters is your ability to execute on that idea. In general, okay? This is what the typical VC venture response would be. Now, and don't be a newbie and ask VCs to sign NDNCs and NDAs. They won't. We won't do it for the most part. We don't need to. NDAs are more valuable when you have a company that's got $100 million in revenue and you want to see the profit and loss statements and the financials. Okay, that's different, right? But in venture, NDAs are almost never signed. Founders spend entirely too much time focusing on the idea and not realizing the idea is worth nothing almost. I don't want to be, dismissive of any founder, but at the end of the day, it's the founder and the founding team's job to execute and to iterate. Another thing, I bring up the design process. When you're building a startup, you're iterating if you're doing it right. It gets better and better and better. People say, well, why are you still building a funding platform? Because it takes a lot of time to iterate all the different steps in the chain. Most founders don't realize all the things that have to be set up right in order for them to raise. Where it's a pattern, where it's a system, where it's designed instead of some haphazard thing, right? So this is something that, again, people overlook when it comes to their idea is, sure, I could tell you I'm building a funding platform. This is how we're doing it. Good luck trying to do it. And the reason is it requires an intimate knowledge of the transactions. And I mean full contact, like you're in the trenches doing them. You see all the haywire that can happen, not just what you theorize or you see on a page, right? And then there's the relationship side. Fundraising is relationships. Recruiting is relationships. Getting clients is relationships. And so a lot of the challenges founders have with raising is they don't have any access to capital because A, they don't know anyone that has it, or B, they don't know where the different types of capital are hiding out and how they move and how they talk to them. So when we talk about fundraising season, there are seasons like off season where it might be actually the best time to approach a non-traditional check writer for the things that we talk about, sponsored capital and raised revenue, which is where you're getting a check where it's not for equity and it's not for interest in your business. You heard that right. It's not for equity or interest in your business. Those types of people, if you build the relationship with them right, you can get a call during the summer that could very much lead to getting some of the funding that you need if you understand how to do capital discovery and to build the relationship with them right to find out what the trigger is that they're willing to write a check for, right? So a week and a half ago, one of my buddies from college came and basically announced, hey, look, I used the narrative that you shared with me around sponsored capital, and I was able to raise a couple $1 million from the people I was also doing my research from. So he was going and doing the 100 client conversation, and literally one of those groups is like, if you're building this, I will fund it. Not equity, not debt. So it's the reason we call it sponsored capital. This happened during the summer, which is exactly what I just said, is that's not fundraising season. But sometimes when you're doing the alternative track, that is the best time to catch somebody, because they're, if they're anything like me, we're junkies. As investors, we're deal guys. And on top of it, we love what we do, we love what we build. And so that's something to kind of consider as you're approaching the different aspect of what you're doing. I'm not saying that sponsored capital is perfect, and I'm not saying it's easy. I have groups that have approached me to do stuff. They came to me, and it's still going to be on their timeline because they're writing large checks for different things, right? In some cases, it's a gift. Here's $2 million because I want to see this outcome come into reality, because I care about the impact this is going to have for female founders, or for founders. Like some of the groups really care about the work that we're doing here in Las Vegas to build up the Vegas venture ecosystem. Maybe they're Italian and they want to see Italian founders. I just got back from Italy and Greece, right? Maybe they want to see Italian founders get a chance. It could be anything that they resonate with that they're partial to, because they have that kind of money, right? So back to your question on IP. Look, most of the time pitching, you don't need to give away the secret sauce. Most of the time when you're sharing to get feedback, you don't have to give that away either. So if you're waiting to do that, you're making a huge mistake, because what's more valuable than protecting the IP is the iterative process of it got better and better. It started as an ugly baby, and now it's actually maturing into a really gorgeous child because we've done that process, right? Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So yeah, don't be afraid to jump in the ring. And this is the reason, guys, why we do Pitch Kung Fu. This is the reason why we have a place for founders to get real-time feedback on what they're building and then to come back. And this is even more importantly, since that's only really once a week in Europe and once a week here in the United States, is the danger room. We have an entire place where founders and funders can give advice back and forth to the founders as they're setting up their pitches. And I can't tell you how valuable that is. This isn't just so that you're ready to raise. This is maybe you're not even describing the problem you're trying to solve accurately. We've had a bunch of founders recently that think that they're describing, like one guy, shouldn't say too much, he'll know who it is, thought he was basically building a retreat. That's what it sounded like to everybody in another country. But it wasn't even that at all. It was a whole therapeutic thing, and just that's how bad the messaging was. And so these are the kinds of things where, unless you have an opportunity to have a lot of at-bats to pitch in a safe environment where people care that your venture gets to move forward, you're gonna waste that opportunity in front of a funder that might actually move the ball forward with you because you're not prepared. And I think that the preparation thing is the thing I just can't say enough. Founders are not. And I am sympathetic and empathetic, because fundraising is, well, as Yuri likes to say in the book, it's like riding a roller coaster in the dark. And we all know how much fun that is. Okay, next question. All right, you want to come up? Okay. This is Miss Alicia.
Alicia.
Cool, Alicia. I screw it up all the time.
I know.
I
correct
apologize.
you every time. It's okay.
It's like we're
Hi.
like 10 times in now.
I know, right? It's okay. It's all right. It's all right. So my name's Alicia, and I am building
Are
a.
you sure it's not Alicia?
I know, right? My name's Alicia. I know, right? My name's Alicia, and I am building a platform that offers community goods and services for the romantically brokenhearted. And our North Star is that we're on a mission to raise the vibration of love on the planet. Before I get into my actual.
Okay. One thing I'll say is, whether you like what she's up to, whether you understand it or not, and I don't know if you kind of stole this from me, it's probably not, because nothing's original these days, but it's important to describe your North Star to everybody. There's a lot of stuff that we're doing over at Fusion. There's a lot of things that we're up to. We got community, we have Accelerator, we have our FAST, which is fundraising as a service program, which this is a fast track program. You can come and do it yourself with us, or you can have us kind of do it with you alongside of you. And then we've got the whole machine learning back-end pairing and matching thing that's quite complicated to build. All of that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I explain to people, our North Star is creating more founders that become funders than anybody else. And that gets a lot of attention, and it gets supporters. How many of you guys liked when you heard her say, this is our North Star? This is our flag in the ground. Was that powerful for you guys? Awesome, continue.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, cool. So not so shameless plug for Fusion 42 before I get to my question. Seriously though, is that I found out about this group in, I want to say February. It was around the Super Bowl. And I'll tell you, it's been a slingshot, in my opinion, for like things that I've learned and things that, when he was talking before about like making mistakes Like, it's better to get your reps in, like, offline before you actually screw things up in front of people that have the ability to write you a check, not that you don't, but to have the support and see other people, like, even Tal just now, he came up here and I was like, oh, you gave your description, and I've seen you in our groups before, and I actually just on the fly shortened mine even more, because I was like, there's just opportunity.
See, and Tal's building something quite technical, and we all know that when he first started explaining it is because it's very exciting, because it's changing lives.
Totally.
It's too much, right? And the rest of us that aren't medical experts don't always get it.
Right.
And you see how succinct he is.
Oh, so much so that I was like, mine's still too long. So yeah, thanks for that.
And I just want to highlight, like, it's because Tal put in the work.
Yeah.
Really what we're providing is the gym environment for you guys to come. You guys, you're going to do the work or not do the work. That's going to determine, by design, whether or not you're successful. I can only do so much. You know, like, a platform's not going to solve all your problems, neither is a community, neither is an accelerator. Isn't it interesting how the same founder can go through the same experience and get funded, and other founders don't? Well, what's the variable there if it's the same program?
Which is awesome, and I feel like you just read my question, because we talk a lot. That's okay. We talk a lot about what needs to, like, how we need to, who we need to be the people that will be funded, or that investors will believe in us. And I'm wondering if, in 5-ish sentence or less, how do you personally know when a founder is ready? And I have a follow-up question.
Great. This is the thing that doesn't get addressed enough. Founders don't spend enough time really asking themselves, who do I get to be? Who am I becoming? And when you say, was the question, why is this?
How do you know when?
How do I know? Okay, I'll give the gut answer and then I'll give the technical answer. The gut answer is, I always know. There was a founder that pitched 2 days ago. It was not her best pitch. We called it out. The first time she pitched, it was awesome. And then I got messages from other investors in the room. She doesn't even know this yet. And they said, that gal's going to make it. There's just something in the charisma. There's something in the preparedness. There's something in between the first time she pitched and 90 days ago, she's built a bunch of crap. She was able to show up and report, hey, we did this. She asked for feedback, and we were not nice, or we're unkind, but
not unkind. They were direct.
She took it on the chin, and she was just like, I'm going to work on those.
Yeah.
Because she knows it's coming from a place for the love of startups, right? So that's the non-technical answer.
Can I pop in on that one then?
Sure.
One of the other things that I feel like really helps when we're in these groups and in Fusion 42 and we're getting this feedback, it's because we can identify with their North Star, that it makes it easier for us to take the feedback, I feel like, because we go, oh, the only reason you're telling us that is because you care, because you want us to succeed, because we want to come back and be the people who end up being the funders after we've successfully.
See, founders are crazy. And I want the crazy innovators of the world, the producers of the world that produce more than they consume. I want them to be as successful as possible. The things you guys are building matter. And I don't want easy things to address, which is your way of being, which you completely control, to get in the way of you getting where you need to go. So the technical answer is, we do 2-minute pitches at Pitch Kung Fu. We do them at our pitch poolside pitches that we do at Venture House. All of our pitch events, no matter where we do them, Investment Week LA, et cetera, and even online with the Pitch Kung Fu sessions, it's all based around a 2-minute pitch. That is by design. I've seen more pitches in my life than all of you guys in this room combined, and then some. So I know what works to make sure that other investors are like, I want to hear more, let's do this. And I know what bores us to death, and I know what gets other founders excited. If it's too much information, other founders can't even say, hey, I'm going to connect you to someone. I know how to explain it because you were so eloquent in your pitch. So the 2-minute pitch shows me almost everything I need to know. Their excitement, their energy, do they have the eye of the tiger? Those kinds of things. And then just a last thing is, like, is there like a studiousness there? Is there like a high learner, I'm interested in learning? I'll give an example. Mr. James here, sitting in the front row. He's been to a lot of frickin' sessions with us. A lot of it is repeat. He learned it, he got it the first time. He used to be a consultant, used to do turnarounds for companies. I'm quite sure that the first time I said certain things, he got it, and then the second time he heard it, if it was different from what most other people talk about when it comes to where's all the capital hiding out, some of that was new. But he's now heard it for like 15 different times. He still shows up. We have founders that have come to these sessions that have had $300 million exits. They've done it 3 times, and they still show up. So I think that is very, very, very interesting, because most founders that have had exits, they can't describe how they did it, and they certainly could not describe and reverse engineer their funding process. And so to me, like, that is what shows me somebody's really going to make it, is because it's iteration. They understand that there's certain things they're great at and there's other things that they're not, and that iterative process of showing up and learning and, hey, I didn't quite get this, or hey, how did you describe that, or how do I interface with this funder in this way? Should I hit them up for capital right now? Should I wait? All of those kinds of things. They keep coming back. And what do you do about a founder that just keeps coming back? You can't stop them. You can't stop them.
It's so dope. To me, it's like repeatable luck by design, right? Like you just go,
100%.
I want to be able to describe to other people how I
And
did
let me
it.
tell you, I just came back from Europe. As many of you guys think as it's challenging here in the United States, if you don't live in Silicon Valley, New York, and Boston, woo! There's an energy in the United States that everybody else recognizes. This country was built on small business enterprise. You like it or don't like it. If you don't like it, you should leave, first of all. But just understand, this country was built on a meritocracy of, if you want to create it and you want to innovate it, you can do it. And that energy is just not the same in all other different parts of the world. I'm rooting for founders everywhere, for sure, but I'm also grateful that we get to build here. I just want to say that. I don't care if people think that I shouldn't be patriotic or whatever. There's a lot of challenges here in this country. Being an entrepreneur is not freaking one of them, because we're here to solve problems, make things happen, make the world a better place, and that's the reason why we get huge amounts of money in return. And as some of my other big funders like to say, being a founder is a privilege. Being a founder is a privilege. Like, what
100%.
place do we live in time in history where we can go raise a bunch of money and we can lose it all and we can fail, and they're like, good, you did it, let's go see if we can go do it again. When you're pitching and you haven't explained that you've had other startups, whether they're successful or not, you're missing out on an opportunity to say, I have battle scars, I have war wounds.
Yeah, there's value.
I've been in the
there's
trenches.
value
I
in
know
it.
what it's like to have bullets come flying by, and I'm trying to raise, and I'm trying to recruit, and I'm trying to balance all this stuff, and my significant other is upset, and sometimes for valid reasons, right? Because the business is the new mistress or mister, and those kinds of things. Okay, what's your follow-on?
So my follow-up question has to do with, you talk a lot about market readiness, and if you could just talk about, I don't know, like, I would imagine it's a little bit different for everyone, but like 3 or 5 points that you look for that indicate that a founder is market ready.
So we were on a Latin American venture capital call, a bunch of VCs from Latin America, and I'm very pro Latin America. I look at, like, Latin America has so much opportunity, because it's like, what if they did actually operate a little bit more free market? What if they did operate with a little bit more democratic principles? Whether you like the United States or not, it has been the standard and the example for the entire world when it comes to entrepreneurship and how well it can work and lift people out of poverty. I'm not saying it's perfect, but South America is very, very behind in that way, and so I'm very excited to do something about it. So somebody was on the call and they said, you've been attending the sessions, what do you think? And they're like, well, Kurt's really firm, he's really direct. And I'm like, yeah, my job is to save you guys time. I don't want you to have to go through the experiences that I've gone through as a founder and as a funder. So to me, that's really the biggest thing that we're helping you guys with in general. A great funder is going to look out for the founders and help try to build ecosystem and help to save them time, because founders don't have time and they really don't have money. And so if you can appreciably guide them in the right direction, I think that puts you in rarefied air, because founders don't get that opportunity. Very few founders get somebody that'll rig the game for their success. And it's not happening. It happens a lot more in the United States than it does in South America. The level of education of the startup founders is nowhere close to where it is. Like, we have Columbia Tech Week next week. I love Columbia. I'm super excited to serve the Colombian people and to help them in any way I can. But there's basics that we take for granted here, just in our standard of living and everything else, and the liquidity we have access to, that they don't even have. Like, we're having you may not feel like this is a very advanced conversation for you guys, but this would be Japanese to most of them, because they don't even have access to, like, even basic knowledge from startup land, because it's never been converted to Spanish, which is crazy.
That's wild.
Because there's 600 million Spanish speakers.
Yeah, that's wild.
So can you reiterate your question again?
Yeah, sure. So 3 to 5 points that you look for that signal that a founder is market ready.
Okay, yeah, that's where I was going with this. One of the things I love about the Latin American founders is they're not afraid to freaking sell. Back to the example. We're going to sell computers, then we're going to build them. I see way too many founders that don't want to sell. Oh, I don't know how to recruit, or oh, I'm scared to pitch. I'm scared to put my pitch up. What are people going to say? What if people kick the crap out of your pitch and it gets better? Right? Oh, I don't have client conversations because you're afraid to sell. Everything that a founder needs to do comes down to selling. Marketing is what gets the leads there, it gets the interest and the attraction there, but selling is where the rubber meets the road. And so that, for me, is what I look for in a founder. And we've broken down in the fundable versus backable versus bankable sessions that we've done, the difference between a founder that's willing to sell and not. It's literally, I think, one of the biggest determinants of your success. And don't tell me you're an entrepreneur or that you're introverted and you don't sell. Okay, fine, don't be a founder.
And in the case of building platforms, what does selling look like to you? Does that include like building wait lists until the platform is ready?
Yeah, so anyway, okay, couple things. So GTM does not mean you come up with the plan and you're done. GTM means you're always planning, you're always adjusting, you're always taking in feedback. You've got Mr. Ben here, he's a marketer, he'll tell you, you're always A/B testing. You're taking A and you're testing it against B. And you always need to have different strategies of how you're gonna get new clients, how you're gonna get new customers. This is before you go raise people. You need to be having as many conversations as possible. So another example from the session the other day was, hey, even if you can say to a funder, hey, I don't have any revenue. You want to know what I do have? I have 5,000 conversations. I've tracked all of them. Here's all the data. This is what they're saying. And this is the bite-sized chunk that is true about 75% of them. They're all saying this. And this is the reason why I believe I found the niche and I found what it is that I know is the solution.
Yeah.
Because they're telling me their problem. They're telling me their pain. And so that's something else that I would just really emphasize is get early feedback. So to put it in the words of the individual that just raised a couple $1 million from sponsor capital is he never builds something he hasn't sold first. Got to be able to sell it first. Got to be able to sell it first. Even when you got easy capital, like we went through this time period, guys, where people thought that they didn't need to sell because they could just get capital. And how wrong they were, and look at what's happened to their valuations. They're doing down rounds, which means their valuation's like flat or lower than the one before. That's super not good for anybody. It sucks for the founder, usually sucks for the funders, and it's because people weren't selling early enough. So I know, we talk about revenue all the time, but revenue solves a lot of problems. And it signals to the market and to funders that you're something that's worth investing in and making sure that you continue to grow. So I didn't give you 5 because I think that is the 5. It's like
it is the fab
it's that critical.
That's awesome. Okay, thanks. Last thing, and I will say a disclaimer on this. Kurt didn't ask me to get up here and say any of this, but I believe that when you do well, that people will naturally be an evangelist on your behalf. And so one of the unique things about Fusion 42 is that I think Brene Brown talks a lot about only get advice from people who have earned the right to give it to you. And I feel like one of the most important things about being in Fusion 42 is that it's not just funders, it's not just founders, there's framers, the people that have the services, the experts in the middle that help all of us show up better for each other and as a community. And so I just think, lost my train of thought with that, but there are all these people in this community, and it's just a really unique perspective and a unique place to be. So I can't encourage people enough to come in there and just let's effing do this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Appreciate
for sure.
that. I'm
for
glad
sure,
it's
for sure.
working for you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Who's next? Who's next? Who's got a question? You gonna come down or is it short? You first, then you. Okay, let's do it.
How's it going? My name's Enrique.
Yes.
My partner and I started Desert Moon Mushrooms, a mushroom farm.
Okay.
Here in Vegas. We want to raise money for the next step. We are currently profitable. Should we?
What's the profit margin, if you don't mind?
Around 20%.
Okay.
We need a lot of money to go to the next step.
Is there anything that you've identified, or 2 or 3 things you've identified that if implemented could immediately take that to a 45% profit margin?
Produce more.
Okay. Produce more product?
Yeah, more product.
Raw or finished? I
Uh,
know that they're kind of raw, but
yeah, they're pretty raw. Just
okay.
we just
That's
need
packaging ready to go out the door.
we just
okay.
need a larger economies of scale.
Okay, and the current acquisition strategy for the profitable, clients that are buying, how did you acquire those clients?
Just by showing them our product, it's really unique.
Okay. Is there a more nuanced strategy that you have for that GTM than we're just showing them product?
Currently, we always sell out, so there's a lot of demand for
Do you
it.
know where I'm going with this? Okay, keep going.
Okay, so my question is, if we ask for money, would it be wrong? Like, should we be raising money for, like, we want to own land to build it, or is there interest in funders for that, or is it typically they're going to only fund renting?
Situational. So two things. First of all, you need to find somebody that's a really evangelist about what you're doing. There's people out there that love psilocybin, love mushrooms, even for raw, even like whatever it is. I understand.
They're all gourmet mushrooms.
Okay, great. I'd find somebody that's really into food. I'm a foodie, but I'd find individuals that really care about that love that movement and understand why that's really important, especially in a food city like Vegas, right? Do you have any contracts in place, any major chefs that are all over this from the city?
We sell to all the major casinos.
Okay. Is there a way to increase those contracts, or is it literally the bottleneck is you don't have enough product?
The bottlenecks, we don't have enough products.
Okay. And you believe in your heart that's completely true?
Yes.
Okay. So literally you had 500 grand tomorrow, you'd immediately increase sales.
We need quite a lot.
Okay.
We need like maybe 5 million for the next farm. It
Okay.
includes like automation.
Is
so that
there
we
no
can lower
stair
our price.
step into that next? Do you guys see what I'm doing here? Okay. There's no stair step? Like you're screwed if you don't get 5 million. You're never going to get the next step.
It is just much more efficient at that
Okay.
size.
I would challenge you guys to think about what the next stage is inside of that. So two things. Real estate's complicated. Like for example, we've done 500 founder and funder events the last 5 years. 300 of those were done, or more than 300 of those were done with no venue. We didn't own the spaces that we did them in and all the cities we did them in. As you guys know, you guys come out to Venture House, the properties are 10 and 20 bedroom houses. We also have a content studio on the Las Vegas Strip, all that kind of stuff. We do own the properties. The level of complexity that creates, as cool as it is, it's a lot of overhead. Now, your business depends on it. Ours doesn't necessarily, because we're basically ecosystem building and we eat the cost because we believe in fostering venture. But I can just tell you the level of complexity, even with what we're doing to expand it, because there's so much real estate involved and real estate's very expensive, it's a significant jump. I would think that the intersection of someone that really loves food or believes that our food is poisoned or whatever, and also knows real estate might be a good archetype of investor to attempt to talk to about this. The difficult challenge is that real estate investors do not think at all like venture investors. They think completely differently because they're data driven, because does the appraisal match or not, kind of a thing, right? Whereas venture is a lot more on like the story of the founders and whether or not you can enroll them into the vision of where you're going to take the future of this company, and their money is going to come along with, right, as part of that journey. So I would recommend strongly that you come hang out and in the Telegram chats and start asking and seeing what some of the nuanced feedback is on it. The other thing I was going to say to you is I don't see and hear a very developed GTM go-to-market strategy with this. And it makes me concerned about if you're going to be able to get to scale if you don't have a more developed sales plan and channel partner plan. So that's something we're literally covering that on next Tuesday, and it's free. All this is free. So I'd recommend that you come and do that. And I would really get really clear, because here's the thing. Anytime a really experienced funder hears you're going to use their money to get to market as far as marketing, unless you can show them that you already have the math, because you've already done the exercise, and you've already broken down what your cost of acquisition is per restaurant, per contract, per chef, per whatever, you're going to find it a hard sell. Because we know how easy it is to burn money on marketing. Joe Rogan was talking about CNN or somebody else, whatever you care about or believe. CNN spent, I don't know how much freaking money to get 10,000 users. It was millions and millions and millions of money. And they demonstrated that they don't have a very good understanding of their audience. They burned a ton of cash. It was not a very efficient thing. Whereas Joe Rogan spends zero. I'll give you another example. How many of you guys seen the Wolverine Deadpool movie? All those viral videos you saw that were put together that Ryan Reynolds did? They didn't put
He's a marketing.
They didn't put any money. They put money into marketing for sure, but they did not put any money behind those organic videos. Now, there was unique advantages that he has as a marketing genius, and he has a marketing company, and he's an actor, and his type of humor, and the whole Deadpool being able to break the fourth wall, which is different than other superheroes. They played on all of that, including the wokeness of Disney and making fun of Disney, which I cannot believe they got away with, and they were able to leverage that. That's a nuanced marketing plan and a nuanced GTM. It was part of their GTM to do these little vignettes with Deadpool, right? And Wolverine and him being at each other's throats and all this kind of stuff. So I think that you guys need to do the same thing. I do not hear founders often enough in their pitch, and this is about to happen. Like if you go do a pitch and I didn't tell you to do this, I'm almost certain that you wouldn't have put your GTM plan and with some clarity. It only needs to be a few sentences in a 2-minute pitch, but you need to be able to describe it.
Okay, so since we're already like in market
Sure.
and there is demand,
Yeah.
is that not enough? Do we need to?
No. GTM is something you're always doing. So every time you open up new markets, what's the GTM plan for that? What worked last time? What could be better? What could give us a better profit margin? I'm not an expert in your industry or in foods in general, but I do know 20% profit margin is probably not going to get you to some of the scale that you want.
Gotcha.
Because your next leap is just, it's $5 million. I mean, that's a huge leap. So something we can continue to discuss. So let's move on to some more questions. But
Okay.
by all means, like this is a conversation. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to say, this is the be all end all.
Another question is, how would we value ourselves?
Yeah.
Didn't-
Talking enough.
Yeah.
Value yourself. That is something we probably don't have time to handle right this second, but we have a whole channel devoted to that with content. It's all free with an expert that's literally walking you through how do we create the valuation and all that. But it's a factor of, is there any technology in the company? Is the business model set up in a way where it's got margins? And I don't just mean the margin you currently have. Is there something about it that makes it more of a startup and a venture versus a small business? Right now I'm hearing it's more of a small business. That's okay. There's pros and cons to both ventures and and small businesses. Startups usually move at a much faster pace. They're much more cash hungry. They need to have innovation. They have to have a moat, which means you can easily protect the venture from other companies that are like it. Some markets tend to be winner take all. This is not one of them, but there is a finite amount of restaurants that want mushrooms in this city and beyond. And so these are things that you got to think about. And again, this is the reason why the GTM is something that's ever evolving. And so the valuation part of it, we need to have a more nuanced conversation.
Gotcha.
Kind of break that down. But awesome.
Thank
Keep
you.
coming in. All right, who else do we have? Quickly. And thanks for not taking anything personally that I say, guys. I'm not trying to be the person that says your baby's ugly. Sometimes it is. But it's because we really want to see your guys' ventures be more successful. And frankly, funders are just not as direct and honest sometimes as I think that they need to be. It's for people to get the message and just know, hey, go fix this. It's all a conversation of just dial this in, just hey, let's move this, or hey, I don't know about this. And guess, you want to know who knows more than I do? The market. The market always knows more than I do in the aggregate. And so that's that's my default answer is, what is the market saying? And you're like, they love our product, we're selling out. Okay, great. How do you do more of that? And how are you in control of doing more of that versus what reactively happens? Coming back to that whole design theme we have today. What's up, buddy?
What's up? I'm JJ, by the way.
Cool.
This is the first time
Yeah.
here at Tech Alley. Just
Long time caller, first time nonsense.
I love that
Long
joke.
time
I do that all the time. I do that all the time.
Sweet. So tell us what you're building.
Yeah. So we're basically building. It's called Check It.
Don't ever say we're basically.
Okay.
Okay.
We are building.
There you go. It's better.
A mobile application that uses AI computer vision technology to help bring synergy to this amateur sports ecosystem and increase the value of the data.
So what I would do if you were pitching this is I would take the actual thing you're doing, I'd put that first, and then I'd say we use AI to do that. Don't put AI in the front row seat. Put the problem and the solution
Cool.
in the
Okay.
AI seat. It's
Yeah.
a little tweak, but it
Yeah.
makes a difference. Okay.
All right, for
Okay,
sure.
What's your question?
Currently, we're building it right now. And
Are you doing it from ChatGPT, or are you building your own LLM from the ground up?
we're gonna build our own LLM,
got
and
it.
we're basically trying to just our northstar. For me, I'm an anime fan, so I use One Piece for our culture to go after. Just trying to make the world a better place through sports, because I personally grew up in there.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for myself, where I know my strategy and every bit of advice that I've gotten is, hey, try to get the data to show that there is something truly there, which we're trying to build. What can I do right now as the CEO to prepare ourselves for the next step of potentially getting fundraising?
Okay, so I'm not a big sports person. I didn't grow up around sports. I don't actually care about them that much. But here's what I do care about. I care about that everybody else cares about them. And I know how powerful sports are. And this is a sports city. I believe it's one of the 5 verticals that Vegas is going to absolutely be able to crush it in from a venture perspective. I love that sports brings people together. I love that people have become so passionate about sports. So to me, I'm too practical. I'm like, I don't want to live or die based on what the Raiders do, right? I like the Raiders now because I'm a Vegas guy through and through. So Team Raiders, you know. But that's been my disconnect from it. But here's what I know. I know that people spend a whole lot of freaking time that I don't think they have on a sport that probably isn't going to impact their life. I know this is pissing all sorts of people off. And they do fantasy sports. So what does this tell me? This tells me as a founder, you should be building some community around what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So your go-to community strategy, and we can talk about this more in the channels in more depth. Anybody that has more questions that wants to whatever, can just tag me in one of the channels and we'll get to you in fairly real time. Start thinking about the smallest, simplest version of a micro community, 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, that you can own the conversation around, that would care about the problem that you're solving and will give you feedback and all of that, and be involved in that. That's what I would do. Whether you're hosting it in person and you're doing backyard barbecues and it's super low key, or whether it's online and it's a place where they get to come talk about their excitement around sports and how it's connected to that.
Like that.
That's one strategy. We call this GTC, go to community. Also, the skills implicit in you being a host and you being a great leader and you being enrolling, which is all connected to your ability to pitch and raise. You learn it from community building, right?
Yep.
Nobody said, here, Kurt, you should start building a bunch of communities across the country in different cities and doing events. I just did it. I just decided it's needed. And I built what I would want to be a part of.
Yeah.
Being around purpose and contribution-driven entrepreneurs that care about impact. And that's the reason we built this SPICE thing that we ran for many years.
Yeah.
And then now we have Fusion 42, which is much more focused on founders that want to fundraise. And then we have Angel X, which is for angel investors that want to really learn and then co-invest together.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I would think about that. Let's have more conversation about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, this idea came to me a long time ago when I actually was a baseball instructor.
Yeah.
And I played sports, particularly baseball, my whole life. And I can think Atomic Network is kind of like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So we've kind of figured, with community, it's that's why all this is coming to be.
Start seeing who's willing to part with some dollars, for the solution you're building. Start seeing who's avid. Find the advocates that are willing to go get other individuals to be a part of what you're doing and test it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're doing the same thing at Fusion. We're always testing different things. We're seeing what worked for that founder, what produced clarity, what was the messaging, how was it, what percentage of people that come to the events or that come to the whatevers, end up having, founders that say, funders that say, hey, I'm interested in this,
Yeah.
or I'd actually like to back this person, Kurt. What do you think? Those kinds of things. So that's where I'd start.
Cool. No, I appreciate that,
Yeah,
man.
and come hang out in the sessions too.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. You ready?
Thank you.
Sweet. Okay. We probably have time for 1 or 2 more after this, maybe. All right. Good to see you again, buddy.
Well, good day, everyone. My name is Martin, and I'm building a mobile app that's designed for contributors to be able to create and share short, personalized introduction videos that help facilitate meaningful connections and knowledge exchange.
That was a lot of words, but do you understand it? Yeah. Great. Good job. Well done.
So my question is, earlier you talked about Dell's model, sell now, build later,
Yeah.
right? Well, what would you say about my product, which is more of a network product, where I have to build the community, and the community is the value, and I have to show that to the community to be able to sell a subscription. So what would you say as
So I love behavioral economics, which is the science of psychology, why people do things, and economics, why do people do things in the long term, right? Mashed together. And inside of that, you have another economics term is called a network effect. How many of you guys know what a network effect is? This is the reason why Silicon Valley kicks so much ass for 60, 70 years. They've had a bunch of freaking talent coming together, solving problems, and it's created so much success, it just keeps building. So network effect basically is the more participants that join a network, or the more talent or output it joins a network, the more valuable it becomes. And this is the community effect at work. So when you're building a marketplace, which is what you're doing, where you have people on one end and on the other hand, and you want them to participate together or interact together or transact together, you really have to have an even more developed GTM, go-to market, and you need to be continually looking at the feedback and the data that you're pulling in to see what's working. This book that I mentioned at the beginning is going to be really good for you, because he says the only metric that really matters is retention. Are people coming back, and are they telling other people about it, right? And why are they coming back? So that's something that I would really start to focus in on is who are the power users and why are they there and what's their reason for coming back? And then I would also recognize that if you're going to talk about community, you should also have a very intentional community design for what you're building. Most people say I have a community. What they have is a group. There wasn't intelligent architecture or design put behind their community. Now, I might nerd out about this a little bit more than most because I've spent so much time in the community building space and then ecosystem building, which is the space even above that, where you get multiple communities interacting with each other. So if you don't have a really well-defined, intentionally well thought out, what's the experience from the minute, for example, with Spice, from the minute that they got the invite to the minute that they showed up at the front door, to they walked in, to live music, to they were handed wine, to they were seated at the table for an intentional mastermind dinner, to the experiences and everything beyond, and then when they left, that entire experience, because we thought about it more and we were intentional about it every step, there was a feeling that people wouldn't, it's not like they went home and said, that was a super intentional event, bro, but they know how they felt. And they kept coming back. And the energy of the room with the individuals that we brought in and who we allowed to come that were purpose and contribution driven created an energy that people absolutely recognized. And then the container of the room, which is the leadership, the city captains that were running the event, even though these were not necessarily always fancy, is what maintained and created that experience. And that's why it was Spice versus, hey, we do mastermind dinners, not like we do, right? So that's something I would really strongly recommend is your GTM and your GTC are tied together. And I usually put them in this order. Your 100 client conversations or 1,000 client conversations, your GTM, which is always evolving. You build it. We're doing sessions the next couple of weeks on it. Then it's your GTC. Like, how do we start thinking about building a branded network, or even if it's a water cooler conversation that we maintain? And then your GTF, which is our go-to fundraise, which is informed by all the feedback, all the iteration, all the clients telling us exactly what the problem really is, how painful it is for them, and what the solution is based on their feedback. The market telling us, not me deciding what I think is best. Is that clear? Okay. Do you have a follow-on question?
What other metrics would you say?
So you can use a bunch of surveys. You could use Google Forms. You don't have to have it be pretty. You don't have to have it super simple. But you just really, again, retention is the main thing. How many people come that decide to come back, and how many people decide to refer other individuals into the network? And the more of that you have going on, the better. We have a goal inside of Fusion of an 8% per week growth. That's not easy. We do it sometimes. We don't do it other times. But knowing what that is and knowing how to track it is really important. So we're really data-driven on the funding platform side, because we need to understand not just what the funders are saying, but what they're actually doing. Not what the funders are saying, but what they're actually doing. And what's the interaction they're having. And then framers, which are the experts in the middle, help the startup stand up. What's their experience as well.
Okay, I guess one more. Any non-dilutive strategies you have to share for anybody here?
Non-dilutive?
Yeah.
We talk about that all the time. You guys can go to my featured articles on my LinkedIn. I've got the little chili pepper there, and I have a bunch of conversations around the different capital macros, the capital categories, capital types, and this topic of sponsored capital. I will say this, there is no perfect capital type. Do not think that giving away equity in your business is a bad thing. It's not, if you choose the right partners, if you choose the right funders. And when you get funded, almost never is it one investor. It's going to be, and this goes back to fundraising fluency, it's going to be a stack of capital in your rounds typically, and then We call that capital stack. What is the different investors that are in there and what's the different types of capital? And then capital sequence is what's the sequence of capital, the daisy chain of relationships and resources that come into your venture. For most founders, this is haphazard. It's not intentional. There's no design. It's all default. But it can be a pattern, and you absolutely can do it, and you can rig the game for your own venture. It just comes down to, are you willing to show up and actually learn this stuff? And I will say we are pretty much the only group out there that teaches it. And it's not because I have a funder background. It's because when you learn to build a funding platform and you have to start teaching this stuff to people, you learn it really, 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 really well. I thought I really knew capital. I knew nothing before I started building a funding platform relative to what I've had to learn, and I'm learning every single day. Every single day. Most funders could not tell you 10 different types of capital. So they don't even know it exists. So how can they help you find it? And understand this, no funder wants to be the last check into a deal, right? So this is the reason why we're tackling this problem. I would come and hang out in the sessions, particularly the ones that are around deep topics on fundraising fluency. We usually start with marketing and sales driven stuff because you have to start there. You have nothing to sell, you have nothing to market, you have nothing to pitch if you don't get that part right. And then we get into what's the mechanics of fundraising, what's the details that you need to know, how do you look for it, how do you do capital discovery, how do you talk to different groups, how do you pitch different groups, right? There's people that you pitch where you're pitching a professional investor. This is what they do full time, and what you're going to get in return is someone that wants terms and wants equity in your company. If you try to pitch somebody that way for sponsor capital, you might just turn on their reptilian brain where it goes from, I was going to write you a check, no interest or equity in your business, to, okay, now they boot up and they're like, okay, I want equity. From the same person if you don't approach them the right way. So I have a funder where he'll write a couple $100,000 checks if he really likes the deal and he doesn't care. But the minute you start having like a real conversation about bigger money, or if you talk to him like you're talking to a VC, it switches something on in him because he's got that killer instinct, right? And so it all depends on what you want. He could be a great partner, or in some cases, maybe that particular project needs some sponsor capital. And this is where I think, again, understanding the spectrum of available capital that's out there. I haven't said it during this session. Most of you guys are chasing after VCs. That's 3% of the capital that's out there. 3%. And most VCs are glorified brokers. That's okay. I was too, to a degree. A lot of the money that we did was our own money, but most VCs are basically running somebody else's capital. So if you want non-dilutive, which usually means debt in most circles, when I say non-dilutive, it does not mean debt. Debt is debt. I mean, you have to pay it back. I love it when people act like, oh, our funding's non-dilutive. Yeah, it's because it's a loan. Cool, that's great. Debt is awesome sometimes. If you have a marketing multiple, meaning that you figured out the math equation of when I spend this, I get this, debt can be amazing because it can be fuel to grow the company. And this is how a lot of private equity companies grow, because they've got their processes and their systems and their sales cycles all dialed in. Debt's way better than equity capital for that. However, there are other options, and it's a really big conversation. So, all right, awesome.
Appreciate you.
We probably have time for one more. Thank you so much, buddy. Time for one more. How many of you guys are enjoying this? Okay, great. We have this 24/7 in the Telegram group. Come and ask whatever you want. You gonna come down? Yeah, is it a short question or a big one? Come down, come tell us what you're working on. Don't let me forget to get a group picture after this.
I'm brand new as of like half hour ago.
Okay.
So I had no
She didn't know she was raising until 30 minutes ago.
No, I didn't. My name's Karami.
Okay.
I am solving the solution of us having to hide our pill box. Okay, so what I've developed and designed is a beautiful pill box, and it's paired with an app, so a pill tracking app and regimen that you can share with a caretaker. And so if your caretaker's across the country, or if you're I don't know, visiting Italy for a couple months, your caretaker, instead of having like a crazy conversation like, Mom, did you take your pills? She can just check the app and she's like, okay, my mom took the pills, you know. So anyway, but I just kind of going through COVID, my mom's like, you got to take all these vitamins and stuff every single day. And she had one of those Monday through Friday, you know, pill boxes. And I was like, we're not doing this. So I made a luxury product I want to position out there as a luxury product. So I was able to trademark the name. It's Pillula, and that means pill in Latin. And I've gone through like 5 different designers. We finally have an industrial designer that really came through for me. I have the prototype that I'm using, and it's gorgeous.
So the app's done?
The app is not done, no.
Okay. And the product is done.
The product.
How many of you guys know what I'm thinking already? Okay. Tell me.
For different reasons.
Rick knows me very well, but
Yes, Rick.
what do you think I'm thinking so far? It's okay. Just be direct.
Yeah.
I know there's a question you want to ask too.
Well, probably 2 things, but one, I think you're thinking about the pitch itself, and it's been a little lengthy. It's not as succinct.
Yeah, I asked her a direct question. She's telling us
this
the
is
story.
literally my first
It's
time
okay.
ever.
It's okay. We're here to help. We're here to help.
It's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
What
fine.
else? What else?
No, that was.
Okay.
Oh,
How many of you guys? Go ahead.
app. Yes.
100 client conversations about the product.
Yeah.
I have a survey that I took this is 2.5 years I've been working on this. So I've done surveys and I did focus group on the app actually, the app features. So did the focus group on the Pilula Pod is what it's called. So I've done some.
Great.
Yep.
What's your question real quick before I?
My question is, I don't know anything about fundraising and I need
You're in
money.
the right room. You're in the right room.
So I'm actually, I actually put together a Kickstarter. I know I have
How many
no
of you
idea.
guys think it's the wrong time to raise when you need money? It is. That's the wrong time. Mm-hmm. The right time was 9 months ago, 12 months ago. It's okay. You're in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get you situated. But you need to raise when you're not desperate. You need to raise when you can actually take in options. And you can have a choice between 6 or 7 or 10 or 12 different investors and choose the one that's most aligned with your project. How many of you guys believe that the company you're building is worth 50 million, 100 million, could potentially have a $100 million plus exit? A lot of raised hands, okay? Treat that company like it's that asset. Are you going to allow your lack of fundraising knowledge, your lack of personal way of being, not getting feedback on that from those that know and love and care from you, or even your clients and customers? Are you going to let the not understanding marketing very well get in your way? I'm not making pointed comments to you. I don't know you very well. Are you going to allow that to happen? A real founder is going to say, no, I will not. I will learn whatever I have to. I will build whatever relationship. I will go however far in order to serve the needs of the customer. What I'm hearing is a very big focus on product.
Right.
And not enough focus on, do you already have the market? And this is so common. I can smell it. I can hear it very, very quickly. It's okay that this is the situation.
Right.
But it is better to have the market than to have the product. Let me give you an example. How many of you guys have been watching Ryan Reynolds, The Rock, or George Clooney and their exits lately? I'm not talking about any of the acting crap they've done. I'm talking about the exits they've had from tequila, all that. How many of you guys are watching how fast these exits are happening? They're happening at record pace. Why? Because they have the audience before they even built the product. And this is how founders, they get this backwards. They build the product, and then they try to go out and find the market. So my concern is that you need to be a lot more focused on GTM, and then that will help you to understand how to do the raise.
Right.
So you've been building this for 2.5 years.
Well, yes.
Okay. Do you have a wait list? Do you have a bunch of people that have said, hey, I want this the minute you're done with it?
Well, no. So I'm getting ready to launch a Kickstarter. So I don't know anything. That's kind of why.
I was a rhetorical question. I'm beating it up a a little bit. I already knew the answer would be no.
So yeah. So I'm assuming a Kickstarter is kind of like that. So once I've not put this out there.
Here's what's wrong about your approach. I'm going to save you a lot of time.
Okay.
Kickstarter is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is not some magic carpet ride into nirvana. You still have to have a market. You still have to have a list. So the dirty secret of crowdfunding is you got to have a crowd, which you don't have. Now you can create it, and I'm not saying you can't. I'm all for it. Let's do it. GTC, your ability to create a community and your ability to create a marketing video, which is essentially your message that inspires them to your North Star, is what dictates the success you'll have with crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a marketing exercise, so is fundraising. It is no different. Crowdfunding is different though because what you have happening is you've got a bunch of little people that are writing you checks. Little people meaning small amounts of money that are effectively deciding to back your project because they want to see it come into reality. What's the difference between a VC? It's just they're writing a really big check and they're hoping that you can bring it to market. The thing that crowdfunders don't understand is the reason why crowdfunding cost about 150 grand is because you need to develop a list, you have to have one, and then you're going to market, A/B test different messages to that list to see what they're willing to buy. And I fund stuff all the time off of Kickstarter.
Right.
You know, for travel or whatever. I bought a pillow that makes sure your head doesn't bob while you're traveling. It's pretty awesome, actually, because none of the travel pillows actually do anything to keep your head from bobbing when you're on the plane, right? So this keeps your head from sinking down. I was like, cool. And what got me wasn't even the product. What got me was the husband and wife and the way they did their marketing. I was like, you know what? Hell yeah, let's do this. So the story is what matters, and so the story is what matters when you're fundraising.
Right.
So you're in the right place, and go ahead with more questions.
Awesome.
But this is a marketing exercise,
Okay.
and that was the part I could sense wasn't developed.
GTM. So would
Go-to market.
Would you consider, like, my first approach would be to approach pharmaceutical companies to buy these for their doctors as a novelty gift?
Okay, so GTM and marketing are not the same thing. Okay,
okay.
It's okay. It's okay. So marketing is how are you going to get leads that you can then sell. Okay, that deserves its own set of attention inside your startup.
Okay.
Go-to market is how are we bringing this entire company to market in a world of infinite possibilities and infinite options.
Right.
I have limited resources, limited time, limited relationships. How can I use my unique whatevers to get this thing to market? And then as you move through building this thing, you will continually refine that. That's the reason why go-to market doesn't have a beginning and an end. You're always going to market,
Right.
especially when you launch new products. Okay, crowdfunding is completely a different audience than you going and selling to corporates. You can do both, usually not with the same product. Maybe it happens sometimes. You did say it's luxury, so it's higher end. I think that you need to spend some more time really getting clear on the niches, and then each niche has its own way of being spoken to. So if you're speaking to a British person about tea, and their thing is tea, which I don't know anything about, I've been speaking to a lot of British folks lately, so that's the reason it came in my mind. You need to understand like that, everything about that in order to have a real conversation and sell them on something that's related to that. So that's what I'm saying is you need to have a nuanced strategy for that.
Okay.
Sometimes the corporates that might be interested in this are the ones that are willing to write you a check to fund it from a sponsored perspective.
Right.
But this is, again, a topic that we would need to get into a lot more depth. So my concern is this. Are you happy that it took you 2.5 years to get to where you are now?
Yeah, because I just resigned from teaching. I was a high school teacher.
Awesome. Thank you
So
for
I
your
resigned
service,
in May. So
Yeah.
now I'm finally working on it full time.
Got it.
So I'm actually fine with it.
Okay, great. Would you be happy with another 2.5 years passing by before you get to market?
No.
Okay, so what kind of time frame are you giving yourself now?
Well, I'd like to do this in the next year.
Do you know what Parkinson's law is?
No.
You do, right?
What is it?
Alicia. Don't get used to it. I'm just kidding. Okay, what's Parkinson's law?
A job will expand to the time allotted.
A project, a task, a job will expand to the amount of time that we give it.
Right.
I think you need to have more expediency around what you're building.
Okay.
A year is great if that's what it truly takes. It's not going to take a year. If you get really, really serious on this, you should be thinking in terms of like.
I'm already talking to manufacturers. I would love to have these in my hands by October, November.
Sure.
So yeah.
So again, I see a classic focus on product. Instead of on the market. So here's what's cool. Let's say the Mushroom Kids are influencers, okay? And let's say that they do a bunch of farm to table content. How much easier do you think that they'd have opening markets, testing products, you name it, if they had a large audience?
Well,
they could start tomorrow and be in business tomorrow.
right.
Going back to we sell computers, then we build them. Most founders build stuff and then try to sell it without actually knowing
So I
if
would
the
love
market wants
to
it.
sell to corporate and like sell them, pre-sell them. by the
Okay,
way.
right, but did you talk to corporates when you
No,
designed the product?
literally, this is
Do you see
where
the
I'm
problem?
at.
You see the problem? I'm not saying it's not fixable, but don't ever do that again. Sell it first. Sell it first. It doesn't mean at scale. Sell it first.
Okay, so sell the idea first.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what entrepreneurship is. Isn't that beautiful?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you show them? Just like some drawings?
Nothing. Nothing.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. That's where I'm like,
Look,
oh my God, how do you
Rick is in the
spell?
software business. Software doesn't exist.
Right.
Not really. It's zeros and ones. And yet it's eaten the world. Cloud computing, all this stuff, it doesn't exist.
Right.
It's an idea, it's a concept. It's the same thing here. If a founder is not able to gain traction, it shows that they don't have enrollments. I'm not saying you don't, I don't know you, but this is the job of a founder, is to enroll recruits into a company that doesn't exist yet.
Okay.
It exists to a certain degree now, but not what it's going to become. Enroll an investor into a world that doesn't exist yet, where this product creates this service for everybody. Enroll customers into a service that isn't as good as it's going to be. Do you think Mark Benioff, when he started Salesforce, was able to show them the monstrosity that Salesforce would become and then change the world with, he put SaaS on the map, which is software as a service, which is the business that
I didn't know
Mr.
who he
Rick is
was.
in. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay.
No, but we're going to do this.
And
yes.
by the way,
okay.
how many of you guys think it's cool to hear founder stories and get the background?
Yes.
Yes.
I do.
Okay. Not only is it inspiring, but success leaves clues. How did I figure out all this extra stuff around fundraising? I studied history. I looked at how all the biggest companies in the world, and more specifically, verticals and industries in the world got created. And I looked at the daisy chain of relationships and resources and the flow of goods and services and the evolution, and I'm like, that's the pattern. And it's true in every industry. One thing we didn't get time to cover today, I intended to cover, was the importance of understanding the key stakeholders in a venture ecosystem and how you can align yourself to them to where you're the person in line that they will hand resources to when they have an opportunity to. Because the government doesn't produce anything. They just take our tax money and they largely waste it. They're not very efficient with capital because they don't have any accountability. Founders are very accountable because the market says, sorry, you ran out of capital, you're done. That's accountability, right? We have a timeline that we're on always. We're up against it. The government doesn't have that. So the government hands resources to founders locally, at the county level, at the mayor level, at the state level, at the regional level, and at the national level. So if you understand how to put yourself in the right position to receive those resources and relationships, which is a whole other conversation. How did I learn this? I studied the founders that have built multi-$100 billion companies, and I say, wow, it's true in China. It's true in South Korea. It's true here, it was true then, and here it is. And these are the kinds of things that founders don't know, and this is the reason we call it fundraising fluency.
I love it. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, welcome to Who's Got My Money, and let's get you into the sessions. All right, guys, I invite you guys all to join me in the Fusion 42 community to come and ask us anything you want. Come and bring your problems, lay us at your feet, our feet, as long as you guys are willing to do the work and want to receive that real-time feedback. We offer really two major things in general. We're building our own ecosystem, and that ecosystem is you can get real-time feedback today on whatever your questions and comments are. And then over time, we have tracks of content from experts that help you to understand. Guys, why would somebody that wants to build funding, do more funding, be helping you guys with all this stuff? Why? Because you're not fundable until you do. I'm more concerned about the market readiness that you guys have, because if you become market ready, you'll either cash flow your way out of it or you'll find funders. Great projects, great founders always get funded. But before we can address whether or not you're fundable, we have to be more concerned about whether or not you're market ready. And most founders are not. And that's okay. It's a process. I'm going to say iterate again and again. Nobody got to be the best at what they do. Everybody knows I love to mountain bike. I did not get to the point where I could do some of the things I do on a bike unless I was willing to fall. And I've fallen a lot off of mountains all the time. It doesn't happen much anymore because I now know what I'm doing. I don't expect any of you guys to understand fundraising or all of this gobbledygook, but I do expect you guys to show up. So if you guys can do that, our commitment to you, whether it's in this Vegas venture ecosystem community or whether it's online at Fusion 42, is that we're here to serve you. I mentioned an audiobook. If you guys want that, come hang out in the Telegram channel with us and we'll get you guys set up. And it's all free.
How are we showing the Telegram group?
I'll get you set up. Come down here for a picture real quick, guys.